What if I told you that Jeff Bezos' trillionaire lifestyle is so unreal that even world leaders appear financially powerless beside him? From a $500 million superyacht to secret projects shaping the future of Earth and space, Bezos built a life few can even imagine. And if you watch until the end, you'll uncover the one asset he owns that quietly surpasses every palace, jet, and empire he's ever built, and almost no one knows about it. Origins, the builder behind the trillionaire myth. Long before Jeff Bezos became the man whose trillionaire aura makes world leaders look underfunded, he was a quiet child in Albuquerque, spending hours dismantling gadgets just to learn how they breathed. While other kids played in the sand, Bezos drew diagrams of solar farms and space colonies, leaving teachers stunned at how naturally he understood systems. That early fascination with structures, how things worked, why they failed, and how they could scale, became the first blueprint of an empire the world wasn't ready for. By high school, Bezos had transformed from a curious kid into an academic phenomenon. He graduated as valedictorian, earned recognition as a National Merit Scholar, and entered Princeton University to study electrical engineering and computer science, a combination that would later allow him to treat the entire global economy like one massive algorithm he could optimize. Princeton was where Bezos first learned the mindset of operating at planetary scale. He devoured complex theories on computation, networks, and automation, not as academic exercises, but as tools he knew he would someday wield. After graduation, Bezos joined D.E. Shaw, a firm known for hiring only the top intellectual athletes in the world. Within a short time, he became one of the youngest vice presidents in the company's history, yet he felt trapped. The salary was generous, the office luxurious, but something far more valuable was missing: scale. Bezos realized that no matter how successful he became on Wall Street, he would always be building inside someone else's blueprint. The world's richest decisions were being made by people who dared to draw their own. Then came the spark that changed everything. An obscure report showing that the internet was growing at 2,300% per year. Bezos didn't see a trend. He saw destiny. To him, the internet wasn't a new technology. It was the backbone of a future that didn't exist yet. And he knew that if he didn't move now, someone else would claim the infrastructure of the digital age. So he walked away from the predictable wealth of finance and stepped into uncertainty. With a notebook full of ideas and a conviction stronger than any safety net, Bezos got into a car with his wife and drove across the United States towards Seattle. Along the way, he wrote the business plan for what would soon become one of the most influential companies in history. It didn't start in a glass tower or a corporate incubator. It began in a cluttered garage, with Bezos building desks from cheap wooden doors because office furniture was a luxury he couldn't yet afford. From that garage, Amazon was born, not as a bookstore, but as an experiment in efficiency, logistics, and scale. Bezos wasn't chasing wealth. He was engineering a system powerful enough to reshape global behavior. Every click, every order, every line of code was a brick in the empire that would eventually turn him into the most influential builder of the modern era. If this origin story surprised you, tell me which moment shocked you most. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. The wedding and personal life at billionaire scale. On the morning of June 27, 2025, Venice woke to a sight so unreal that even locals who spent their lives watching royalty glide down the canals stopped and stared. Anchored on the Grand Canal was a vessel that didn't look like a yacht, it looked like a kingdom. Bezos had chosen a $500 million superyacht as the venue for his wedding, a floating fortress of glass, marble, and silent wealth. The ship's exterior was polished so perfectly that the water around it reflected back like a mirror, creating the illusion that the vessel hovered above the sea itself. From a distance, it appeared ceremonial. Up close, it was engineered spectacle. Floral arrangements imported from Florence lined the marble stairs. Drone-mount lanterns floated above the deck, programmed to mimic the constellation under which Bezos and Lauren first met. The yacht wasn't simply docked, it was staged, positioned so that every camera angle captured Venice as though it were part of a cinematic backdrop crafted exclusively for them. Inside, the atmosphere felt like a convergence of industries and dynasties. The guest list blended Hollywood icons known for their global influence, early tech founders who helped build the digital age, discreet European royals, and political figures whose presence alone sent subtle messages about alliances and soft power. Every handshake carried a history, every conversation hinted at future ventures. The wedding looked romantic, but anyone who understood power could see that it operated like a summit. In the center of it all stood Lauren Sanchez, wearing a gown valued at $250,000, stitched with precision beadwork that refracted light like tiny satellites. Designed specifically for movement on a yacht, where wind patterns behave differently from land, it draped and floated as though the fabric understood gravity on its own terms. Photographers called it a dress, insiders called it a message. Lauren wasn't marrying into an empire, she was stepping into the role of co-architect. The cuisine reflected the same orchestration. A team of Michelin-starred chefs constructed a menu that paired Mediterranean simplicity with billionaire-level precision. Fresh sea bass carved to millimeter perfection, truffle-infused risotto blended tableside, and desserts engineered to maintain shape despite open-air conditions. Even the wine, vintages protected in climate-controlled cases, was chosen for how it performed under maritime humidity. After the final fireworks fell into the Venetian night, Bezos and Lauren departed quietly towards Sicily. Their honeymoon destination wasn't a remote island or a private villa, but the legendary San Domenico Palace, a place where suites cost $7,000 per night and views stretched so far they looked like they belonged to another century. But the choice wasn't about luxury. It was about symbolism. San Domenico is where legacy is contemplated, where historic walls remind visitors that power is meaningful only when it survives time. Bezos's wedding wasn't a display of spending, it was a demonstration of architecture, of how a personal milestone can become a statement about continuity, dynasty, and the quiet construction of a future that extends far beyond the ceremony itself. Amazon era, code, cloud, and global conquest. When Jeff Bezos launched Amazon from a garage in Seattle, most people thought he was building a quirky online bookstore. What they didn't understand was that Bezos was never designing a store, he was designing a system, and systems scale in ways that ordinary businesses cannot. As Amazon processed its first orders, Bezos quietly mapped the infrastructure for a retail empire that would eventually reshape how the entire planet buys, ships, and thinks about time itself. Books were merely the Trojan horse. Once Amazon mastered how to predict customer preferences using early algorithms, Bezos expanded into electronics, home goods, apparel, and eventually into categories that traditional retailers believed were untouchable. To support this, he built a logistics network that looked less like a company and more like a sovereign nation. Hundreds of fulfillment centers, fleets of cargo planes, and robotic systems capable of moving inventory with precision that surpassed human speed. Every warehouse Amazon opened wasn't just a building, it was a node in a global machine. The pivotal transformation came in 2006, when Amazon engineers realized they had accidentally built something far more valuable than retail infrastructure. To keep Amazon running, they had constructed advanced computing clusters, elastic, resilient, and infinitely scalable. Bezos made a decision only someone thinking at planetary scale would make. He turned Amazon's internal computing power outward and introduced Amazon Web Services, or AWS. From the outside, AWS looked like a developer tool. In reality, it was a gold mine. AWS became the backbone for Netflix's streaming architecture, NASA's mission data, Airbnb's booking system, financial institutions, startups, and nearly every major application people use daily. For some companies, a single hour of AWS downtime could cost millions of dollars. Bezos had effectively placed a toll gate on the information highway, and the world paid willingly. By the late 2010s, AWS alone was generating tens of billions of dollars annually in high-margin revenue. This engine of profit pushed Bezos's personal net worth beyond $200 billion, making him one of the richest individuals in modern history. But for Bezos, wealth was merely a side effect. The real obsession was scale, how to reduce shipping time from 2 days to 1, from 1 day to a few hours, and eventually from hours to minutes. Amazon's last-mile delivery experiments, drones, automated vans, airborne fulfillment centers, were all prototypes of a future where geography no longer limits commerce. Then, in 2021, Bezos did something people misinterpreted. He stepped down as CEO, not to retire, but to reposition. He called it a realignment, a strategic shift that freed him to pursue ventures that required unbroken focus, building a spacefaring civilization through Blue Origin, constructing the 10,000-year clock inside a mountain, and reinforcing Amazon's position not just as a company, but as global infrastructure. The Amazon era wasn't about retail, it was about conquest of cloud, logistics, data, and time. And Bezos engineered it with the precision of someone who always knew he wasn't building a store, he was building a civilization. Blue Origin, moon, rockets, and 300,000 acres of ambition. Long before the world obsessed over private rockets, Jeff Bezos was already building a space company in the shadows. In the year 2000, when most billionaires were buying sports teams or beachfront mansions, Bezos quietly created Blue Origin, a name almost no one recognized for the first decade. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was laying foundations. And unlike the loud, explosive style of the emerging space industry, Bezos chose a philosophy that revealed exactly how he thinks. Gradatim ferociter, step by step, ferociously. That motto became the blueprint for everything Blue Origin touched. The company avoided grand announcements. Instead, it built capabilities brick by brick, test by test, year after year. The most symbolic of these bricks was land. 300,000 acres of rugged Texas desert, purchased for nearly $75 million. To outsiders, it looked like empty wilderness. To Bezos, it was the perfect cradle for a new era of human propulsion. On this vast expanse, engines roared, booster stages landed, and flight trajectories carved through the sky as Blue Origin's engineers worked in near total privacy. This secrecy wasn't accidental. Bezos believed the next frontier required patience, not spectacle. When he finally stepped into the public spotlight in 2021, boarding the New Shepard rocket for its first crewed mission, it wasn't a billionaire joyride. It was a declaration that his 2 decades of silent engineering had matured into a reliable spaceflight platform. The flight lasted only minutes, but symbolically it was the moment Bezos proved that Blue Origin had graduated from theory to capability. What few people grasp is that New Shepard is only the smallest piece of his long-term vision. Bezos isn't trying to become a space tourist mogul. He is trying to build the infrastructure of a spacefaring civilization. Roads, factories, power grids, every essential system Earth relies on must eventually be replicated beyond our atmosphere. That is why Blue Origin's roadmap stretches far beyond suborbital hops. The company has spent years developing Blue Moon, a lunar lander designed for NASA's Artemis program, a machine intended to deliver cargo, rovers, and eventually entire habitat modules to the moon's surface. Each component is engineered not as a standalone vehicle, but as part of a much larger ecosystem. Inside Blue Origin's headquarters, models of orbital stations, fuel depots, and lunar construction rigs sit beside engine prototypes. These are not science fiction props. They are early sketches of a logistical network that Bezos believes will one day support millions of people living and working in space. His reasoning is ruthlessly practical. Heavy industry should move off Earth, leaving the planet to remain a natural sanctuary while manufacturing relocates to orbit or the moon. And for that shift to happen, someone must build the interstate highways of space. That someone Bezos intends is Blue Origin. Bit by bit, rocket by rocket, acre by acre, he is constructing the backbone of humanity's next chapter, not as a spectacle, but as infrastructure designed to last centuries. Real estate, supercars, jets, and robotic tech. When Jeff Bezos spends money, he doesn't buy comfort, he buys positioning. And nowhere is that philosophy clearer than in his real estate portfolio, which functions less like personal housing and more like a geographic map of influence. Each property sits near power centers, media, politics, finance, technology, quietly anchoring Bezos where decisions are made before the public ever hears about them. In Beverly Hills, Bezos acquired a historic estate once owned by Jack Warner, the co-founder of Warner Bros. The property alone cost $165 million, placing him directly inside Hollywood's most exclusive corridor. This was not about luxury views or palm trees. It was about proximity to cultural power, studios, executives, and narratives that shape global perception. Just miles away from film lots and media empires, Bezos secured a seat inside the machinery of influence itself. On the opposite coast, Bezos made an even more symbolic move. In Washington, D.C., he purchased a former textile museum and transformed it into a private residence spanning over 30,000 square feet, investing more than $80 million into the project. The location matters more than the walls. This estate sits near the nerve center of American policy, regulation, and defense contracting. For a man whose companies intersect with logistics, cloud computing, and national infrastructure, geography became strategy. Further south, Bezos expanded into Hawaii, acquiring an oceanfront estate valued at $78 million. The property includes private beachfront access and natural isolation, offering not only privacy but strategic retreat. For someone operating at Bezos' scale, discretion is a form of security, and this island estate functions as both sanctuary and silent command post. In Manhattan, Bezos added a penthouse at 212 Fifth Avenue, an acquisition costing roughly $80 million. Positioned in the heart of New York's financial ecosystem, the residence places him within walking distance of investment banks, hedge funds, and legacy institutions that still move capital across continents. When combined, Bezos's global real estate holdings exceed $600 million, forming a real-world network of power nodes rather than a collection of homes. His taste for engineering excellence extends beyond buildings. In his private collection sit some of the rarest machines ever built, including a Koenigsegg Trevita valued at $4.8 million, one of only two in existence. Alongside it rests a Bugatti Veyron Mansory worth $3.4 million and a Lamborghini Veneno Roadster priced near $8 million. These vehicles aren't status toys, they are rolling proof of what happens when human design is pushed beyond practical limits. Yet, in a quiet garage corner, Bezos still keeps his 1997 Honda Accord, a car worth almost nothing financially but priceless symbolically. It represents restraint, the reminder that obsession with engineering, not luxury, built everything he owns. The global movement, Bezos relies on two Gulfstream G650ER jets, together valued at nearly $150 million. These aircraft function as airborne headquarters, allowing Bezos to cross continents, conduct meetings, and make decisions at 40,000 feet while time zones collapse beneath him. But even his interest in robotics reflects foresight rather than novelty. Bezos owns Spot, the quadruped robot from Boston Dynamics, priced at $75,000, and continues investing heavily in artificial intelligence and automation through Bezos Expeditions. These technologies aren't curiosities, they are early building blocks for a future where labor, logistics, and intelligence converge. This isn't a billionaire lifestyle, it's a carefully engineered architecture of control, designed to operate quietly, globally, and decades ahead of everyone else. The superyacht and the future, Koru, power and legacy. When land was no longer enough, Jeff Bezos expanded his empire onto the ocean. That expansion took physical form as Koru, a superyacht valued at nearly $500 million, stretching 127 meters from bow to stern. This was not a yacht built for leisure, it was built as a mobile command center, a place where wealth, privacy and influence could move freely beyond borders, laws and cameras. Koru is more than a vessel, it is a floating city. On board are multiple swimming pools, a full spa complex, private cinemas, lounges designed for confidential meetings, and a helipad capable of handling large aircraft transfers. Every surface, every corridor, and every deck was engineered to feel less like a boat and more like a high-security resort drifting silently across international waters. Accompanying Koru is a dedicated support ship, equipped to carry crew, supplies, and even a submarine, allowing Bezos to operate completely self-sufficiently for extended periods. What makes Koru truly powerful is not its size or luxury, but its function. This yacht allows Bezos to host private gatherings away from governments, paparazzi, and public scrutiny. High-level discussions, strategic partnerships, and future-facing negotiations can unfold mid-ocean, where jurisdiction blurs and discretion reigns supreme. Koru has already served as the setting for some of the most exclusive moments in Bezos's personal and professional life, including events attended only by the world's most powerful individual. For Bezos, Koru represents a shift in thinking. Cities have traffic, nations have regulations, airspace has limits, but the ocean offers scale without interruption. When anchored offshore, Koru becomes a sovereign environment, an extension of Bezos's belief that infrastructure is the real source of power. Just as Amazon conquered logistics and Blue Origin targets space, Koru allows Bezos to operate in a realm where geography itself becomes an advantage. This floating empire also symbolizes the final evolution of Bezos's mindset. He did not start with luxury, he started with efficiency. From a cheap desk built from a wooden door to a yacht worth $500 million, the journey was never about excess. It was about building systems that remove friction. Koru removes the friction of borders, time zones, and surveillance, turning the ocean into a platform for long-term influence. In the end, Koru is not the reward for Bezos' success, it is the tool he uses to shape what comes next. What do you think Koru really represents? Ultimate freedom, quiet power, or something even bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Jeff Bezos' life shows us far more than extreme wealth. It reveals how power is engineered, scaled, and protected. First, his journey proves that infrastructure builds empires, not luck. Every warehouse, rocket engine, and data center was a brick in a much larger system designed to outlast competitors. Second, his investments show that wealth grows fastest when it buys time, not things, from private jets used as mobile offices to properties turned into influence hubs. Third, Bezos demonstrates that legacy isn't about spending billions but about controlling the future, whether through space exploration, AI, or logistics networks shaping global trade. If you enjoyed exploring the trillionaire world behind Jeff Bezos, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And follow closely because part 2 will reveal the power moves Bezos is making right now that could redefine the next century.